This story is about discovering that betrayal isn't a single act, but an entire life built in secret. It's about the moment when love turns into evidence, silence becomes power, and the truth, once uncovered, can never be put back where it was. The glitter on her collarbone wasn't from anything we owned. That was the first thing I noticed. Second, she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. Again, she tossed her heels by the door like she lived alone and didn't even flinch when one hit the wall. I was sitting on the couch, lights off, TV flickering on mute, holding her phone in my hand, the spare one, the one she thought I didn't know about. "I told you," she said, annoyed before I even spoke. "It was just dancing. Not that it's any of your business anymore." That line, "any of your business anymore," it echoed like a gunshot. She hadn't even sat down yet. Just stood there, half drunk, fully confident like she held all the cards. I asked calmly, "Are you seeing him again?" She smirked, didn't answer. Just shrugged and grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge like we were roommates who happened to share a kitchen. Then she said it. Over her shoulder, no eye contact. "Don't like it? Divorce me." She didn't even pause for my reaction. Just walked off toward the bedroom, humming some song that wasn't meant for me. So I got up, set her phone down gently on the kitchen counter, screen still open to a message that said, "Can't stop thinking about your mouth." And I made a call. Not to a lawyer, not to her mother. I called someone else, a woman she never expected to hear from again, someone who owed me a favor. And within 1 hour, the truth she'd been dancing around for months was no longer a secret. Not to me, not to her friends, not to her job, not to him. By the time she realized what I'd done, she was in an Uber, barefoot, screaming at her phone. She came racing home so fast she didn't even close the car door. She kept asking me why I'd do something so extreme, why I'd ruin everything. But the truth? She ruined everything the night she let him wear my hoodie. And that was only the beginning. Callie had no idea what I'd done. She walked through the door that night, still thinking she had the upper hand. Still thinking I was just some sad little husband too spineless to fight back. That was her favorite weapon, really. Not yelling. Not cheating, even. No, it was making me feel small. Making me feel like I was lucky to have her, even when she reeked of someone else's cologne and lied to my face like it was sport. But she had no clue that while she was out dancing, I'd opened a door she thought was long closed. The woman I called, her name's Eliora. She and Callie had been best friends once, inseparable, until 2 years ago, when Callie completely ghosted her after Eliora got engaged to a guy Callie used to flirt with in college. Petty stuff. Immature. But that's who Callie had become, the kind of person who burned bridges like it was a hobby. She never even told me what caused the fallout, just said, "She's toxic," and left it at that. Eliora didn't hesitate when I called. She just said, "I was wondering when you'd figure it out," in a tone that still makes my chest tighten. Turns out, Eliora had been sitting on things. Messages Callie sent her before they stopped talking. Screenshots, voice notes, a half-recorded video taken in a bathroom at some bar downtown. And the kicker? Eliora had proof that Callie's affair had been going on for longer than I ever imagined. Nearly 2 years. 2 years of fake yoga nights, girls' trips that were actually Vegas hotel suites, and networking events, where her phone conveniently died. I didn't cry. Not then. I didn't scream or smash anything either. I just sat down and listened. And as I listened to Callie's voice whispering things to someone who wasn't me, laughing at how easy I was to manipulate, something cold settled over me. It wasn't rage. It was clarity, the kind that comes when you finally stop lying to yourself. I didn't plan revenge, not exactly, but I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. So I sent exactly 3 files to 3 people. Her manager at work, who she had lied to about business travel. Her cousin Mila, who always looked at me like I was the problem. And her precious Travis, who apparently didn't know she was still sleeping in the same bed as me on the nights she wasn't with him. And to each of them, I added a note that simply read, "Just so we're all on the same page now." She must have gotten wind of it halfway through the night because she came barreling through the front door like a hurricane with expensive highlights. She didn't even ask what I did. She knew. Her voice cracked when she demanded, "Why would you do that to me?" As if I had betrayed her, as if I was the villain in her twisted little drama. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move from the couch. I just looked at her and said, "You told me to divorce you. This is me considering it." That shut her up for a second. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I saw something behind her eyes other than smug detachment. It was fear. Not of losing me, but of losing control. And then she said the one thing I didn't expect. "You're blowing this way out of proportion. It didn't mean anything." That line, that one broke something in me. Because I realized in that moment, to her I didn't mean anything either. I was just a placeholder, a prop in her curated life. But it wasn't over. No, not even close. She hadn't seen what I'd left in her closet yet. She hadn't realized I'd gone deeper than just her messages. Because what I found next? That was the real bomb. The next morning she acted like nothing happened. No apology, no explanation. Just a fake yawn, a shower, and her usual protein shake, like she hadn't just watched her world begin to crumble 8 hours earlier. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Because while she was sleeping off whatever drinks she'd had with whoever she was with, I'd been awake, and I'd found something. Back when we moved into this house, she insisted on converting one of the guest closets into a seasonal storage space. I never went in there, ever. It was her mess of handbags, boots, wigs, don't ask, and makeup kits, the size of tactical backpacks. But last night, while she slept with one foot hanging off the bed like a bored teenager, I opened that closet for the first time in years. Buried behind a stack of old purses was a small black box. Locked, but not too cleverly. Just a cheap clip-on lock anyone could pop with a paperclip and a little resentment. Inside were things that didn't belong in a marriage. Photos. Printed ones, like from a disposable camera. Weirdly nostalgic, until I looked closer. One was from a beach trip I never went on. Another from a hotel balcony, her in a towel. Someone else's tattooed arm, clearly visible holding a wine glass beside her. There were letters too. Actual handwritten letters. Something almost romantic about it, if it didn't make my stomach turn. "I miss the way you say my name," one of them read, signed only with an initial. And at the very bottom, a key. No label. Just a single silver key tied to a red ribbon. I didn't know what it opened. But I knew one thing. She didn't want me to have it, and that made it mine. I put everything back exactly the way I found it. Closed the closet door. Made coffee. Pretended to scroll my phone. when she came into the kitchen wearing one of my hoodies, like she still owned the right to my warmth. She smiled and asked if I was still mad. I told her no. I told her I understood. I told her I just needed a day to clear my head. She bought it because that's what she wanted to believe. But in reality, I was already planning my next move. That key, I was going to find the lock, and once I did, there would be no coming back. I waited until she left the house. She said she had a brunch thing with Camille, which was hilarious because I'd already spoken to Camille. She hadn't seen Callie in over 6 weeks. Callie didn't know I was starting to quietly stitch a picture together behind her back. Not revenge, at least not yet, but truth. Real, undeniable truth. That was my only obsession now. I took the key from the drawer where I'd hidden it beneath some old receipts. No label, just that red ribbon tied around it like a warning. I spent 2 hours searching the house, trying it on drawers, boxes, cabinets, even the old lockbox we kept under the stairs. Nothing. I was about to give up until I remembered something weird she once said. Back when we first moved in, she had joked, kind of nervously, about the landlord forgetting to remove a mailbox in the old building across the alley. Like a free locker, she laughed, brushing it off. I hadn't thought about that in years, so I went there. It was barely a building anymore, just a condemned duplex scheduled for demolition. But the mailboxes were still bolted to the inside wall of the entryway, rusted, forgotten. And one of them had a tiny heart sticker on the corner, faded, torn. Like someone tried to peel it off, but changed their mind halfway. I slid the key in. It turned like butter. Inside was a single manila envelope. No name, just taped shut, like it was never meant to be opened again. My hands were shaking. I took it out and walked back home without looking inside, like somehow I knew that once I did, nothing would be the same again. I sat down at our kitchen table, her nail polish still chipped on the edge of the wood from when she spilled a bottle last month, and opened the envelope. There were 3 things inside. First, a receipt for a storage unit registered under a fake last name. A unit she'd been paying for monthly for over 4 years in cash. Second, a photograph of her and another man holding a newborn baby. She wasn't pregnant when we got married. She told me she never wanted kids. She said she wasn't built for motherhood. She said it with such conviction that I believed her. But there she was in a hospital gown, holding a baby with her eyes, smiling. Third, a letter addressed to someone named James, saying she was sorry she couldn't keep visiting him, but that everything had to stay buried. She wrote that she would always love him, but things were more complicated now, and he could never know. My stomach dropped. For a long time I didn't even blink. I just stared at the paper, reading those words over and over until they stopped making sense. Until I stopped making sense. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't even mention the key. I kissed her on the forehead when she got home and asked if brunch was fun. She lied to my face and said Camille got a new puppy. I nodded and smiled. Because now I had the truth. And I wasn't just her husband anymore. I was the one holding the match. She hummed while brushing her teeth that night. I just stood behind her in the bathroom doorway, watching the reflection of a woman I didn't recognize anymore. Not because she looked different, she didn't. Same hair, same eyes, same little freckle under her left ear. But now that I knew what she was hiding, it was like her entire face had been rewritten in code only I could read. I kept thinking about the baby, James, the hospital photo. 4 years of lies woven so tightly into our marriage that I hadn't even noticed the seams coming apart. She had a whole other life, a child, a past she buried like a crime scene, then came home and kissed me like I was Plan A. I didn't sleep that night. She fell asleep fast like always. Back turned to me, breathing soft and even. But I was wide awake, staring at the ceiling, one hand gripping the side of the mattress, like I was afraid I'd fall off the earth. By morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. I wasn't going to rage or cry or throw the envelope in her face. She wanted me to break. She was counting on me to fall apart, to make it easier for her to frame herself as the victim. I wasn't giving her that, so I played the part. I made her coffee, kissed her goodbye, even complimented her dress. Something I hadn't done in weeks. She smiled like she was winning again, like I had gone soft. But what she didn't know was that I had already driven to the storage facility. I had the address from the receipt in the envelope. It was on the edge of town, tucked between an abandoned laundromat and a row of closed-down vape shops. I walked in, gave the fake name on the paperwork, and was escorted to Unit 317. What I found inside made everything worse. Boxes, not many, but enough to matter. Inside them, baby clothes, diapers, a half-written birthday card with a crayon drawing of a man and a woman holding hands. But the handwriting wasn't Callie's. It looked like a child's. And suddenly I realized something terrifying. She hadn't just had a child. She was still seeing him, still lying, still building a secret world without me. And now I had the proof. I didn't go home right away. After seeing those boxes, the tiny shoes, the folded onesies, the card drawn by a child I'd never met, I just sat in my car, parked outside that dusty storage unit, feeling like a stranger in my own life. I kept wondering how many birthdays she missed with me so she could be at his. How many times she said, "I love you" to me while carrying memories of a boy she never told me existed. But the worst part? It didn't feel like shock anymore. It felt like confirmation. Deep down, I think I always knew something was off. She was too careful, too casual and in the way she hurt me, like someone who had practiced hiding guilt. And now I understood why. Because she'd been living two stories at once. One where I was the good husband she kept on a shelf, and one where she disappeared into motel weekends and school plays I was never invited to. I drove for hours, not aimlessly. I had one place in mind. A friend of mine from college, Jonah, worked in private investigations. He owed me a favor I never cashed in. I told him I needed confirmation, not speculation, not guesses. I gave him Travis's full name and phone number, which I pulled from her call log months ago when I still believed in coincidences. I didn't tell him why. He didn't ask. He said I'd hear from him within 48 hours. When I got home, Callie was in the kitchen lighting candles, playing one of those soft R&B playlists she only ever turned on when she wanted to manipulate the mood. She smiled at me like we were some happy, normal couple. Said she was trying to bring the romance back. I asked her what inspired that. She said, "We've been off lately. I just want to reconnect." Her eyes didn't flicker once. That scared me more than anything. She was flawless in her performance, so I played along. We ate dinner, we laughed. We watched the pilot of a show she'd already binged without me. She pretended she hadn't seen it before. I pretended I didn't notice. Later, when she was asleep again, curled up like a cat who'd never clawed anything, I went into the guest room and called Jonah. He didn't waste time, said Travis didn't live where she told me he lived. Said he'd followed Callie last Saturday. Said she spent 4 hours in a park, not just with Travis, but with a little boy who looked about 5. Same hair, same dimples, same smile she used to give me when we were still real. She had a son. She was still a mother. And every time she came home and said she was tired from errands, she was holding a child who had her eyes and his name. And now I knew. She had chosen to erase me from that chapter of her life completely, but I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to do the one thing she never saw coming. I was going to let her lie until it crushed her. The next time she said she was running errands, I held the door open for her, kissed her cheek, even offered to gas up her car while she was out. She looked at me with a weird softness, like guilt was starting to nibble at the edges, but not enough to stop her. Guilt doesn't mean much when someone's that far gone. She left wearing that same beige coat she always wore when she visited him. I knew, because Jonah had followed her again. Same coat, same park, same child. It was their pattern now, the one she thought she had hidden so well. But she never changed her route. People in affairs almost never do. They fall in love with the routine of the lie. It becomes safer than the truth. While she was gone, I went into her closet. Not to snoop, not anymore. I was past curiosity. I was there to take one thing. The envelope from the storage unit. I made copies of everything, every note, every receipt. I scanned the photo of her and the child, cropped Travis's face just enough to leave doubt, and printed 4 clean versions. Each copy went into a separate envelope. One to her boss, one to her sister, who once told me Callie would never hurt someone like that. One to her father, who already disliked me for being too soft. And the last one, I left it on her nightstand. No name, no message. Just the photo. When she came home that evening, she looked off. Her smile was a second too late, her laugh a little too forced. She asked if I wanted to watch a movie, and I said sure. We watched a romantic comedy on something she picked, and she fell asleep with her head on my shoulder, like we were safe again. At 3:11 a.m., she found the envelope. I didn't pretend to be asleep. I heard her gasp. I heard the paper shake in her hands. Then I heard something I hadn't heard from her in over a year. She whispered my name, not angrily, not condescendingly, just broken. But I didn't answer. Because the truth was I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her consequence. She sat on the edge of the bed for over an hour that night, holding the photo in her hands like it was something fragile, something alive. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching the weight of her own choices finally settle on her shoulders. When she finally looked at me, her face was pale and bare. No defenses, no charm, no performance. Just her. I didn't know how to tell you, she whispered. So I kept not telling you. There was no dramatic confession, no begging or screaming. Just silence between us that said more than words ever could. She told me about James. How he wasn't supposed to happen, how scared she was, how Travis didn't want to be a father, and how she had made the decision to raise him on her own. Until she didn't. She left that life behind, like a chapter in a book she didn't want to finish. And then she came back to me, but that version of her, the one who wanted stability without honesty, I had already died a long time ago, and the woman sitting in front of me now knew it too. I listened. That's all I did. Because after everything, I realized that no explanation would undo the lie. And strangely, I didn't need it to. I wasn't looking for revenge anymore. I was looking for a release. I moved out 2 weeks later. No drama, no courtroom battles, just a simple, quiet separation. She kept the house. I took the dog and a couple of bookshelves. We signed the papers like two people finishing a contract they both knew had expired long ago. It's been 11 months since then. I've got a small apartment now, nothing fancy, but peaceful. I started hiking again, reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years, got into photography, something I always wanted to try but never had time for in my old life. Funny how much time you find when no one's lying to you. Callie and I don't talk anymore, but I heard from a mutual friend that she's trying to be present in James's life again. I hope she sticks with it, I really do. Because despite everything she did, that little boy deserves a mother who shows up. As for me, I'm not angry, not bitter, not broken. I'm free. And for the first time in years, that's enough.